Hello again, Bill Pfeiffer speaking from Marysfield. So very, very good to be with you. It gives me an opportunity to be able to serve, to be able to minister to people, to be able to do good things for people's hearts. And you feel free to do the same thing by sharing anything that you think that we're saying that is really good. You know, I'm going to continue with the whole story of me being a married priest. As I think about that, I am a priest and a dad. And I would like to think that the one makes me better at the other. And I know that that is true by experience over the course of the years. And so, one of the simple principles in logic is if you've been doing it, it can be done. And that's been the story with Marysfield and Cynthia and me for the last 45 years. You know, if you can do it, if you're doing it, it can be done. And that's the way it is. There's some things I'd like to kind of go back on. We talked a little bit about when we were first married. We lived in Naperville, Illinois. And one of the things we did then, and probably wouldn't have done that again. Cindy was 9 months pregnant with Catherine Ann, our first. We went to Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City for an interfaith charismatic renewal, 55,000 people there. But while I was walking down the concourse, just before Mass was about to be said for the Catholic part of the community, a prophet there, and we've been talking about prophecy. This is a common thing. You know, it's not common in the typical church experience, but it is a common thing in charismatic communities. A lady came to me and said, "The Lord just said, I have not taken anything from you, but I have added things on to your gift and ministry." And I knew from that moment on another affirmation or reaffirmation that everything was okay. And from that type of experience, the beginning of really feeling comfortable being married priest more and more, I ended up as I'll share later on with Marysfield. I was celebrating Eucharist every day, every Sunday and here for my family every Sunday. So in 1982, we began Marysfield on March 17th, and we moved shortly thereafter here to our permanent home now. 6 times we moved in 7 years, awaiting each time that we moved one for one of our children. This was number 5 that was coming when Cindy helped us to move into our home here, where we've lived for the last 37 years. For 9 years, we worked out of our home, sharing Marysfield. We had 11 host homes. Often we hosted some of the girls in their late pregnancies here and taking care of them while we had 5 children at that particular time. What we would do is have churches. I would speak sometime at churches or organizations, and they would have baby showers for us, and we'd come away with a carload of diapers and baby clothes and baby formula and all of the things that children need and young mothers need to get their lives started with their babies. And we would give them enough of the things they needed for 1 whole year free. And then if they brought back what was still usable, we would give them something for the next year, all of the baby items again that they might need from diapers to baby formula. Cindy had a code with the nearby hospitals where she would talk to some of the girls that were there to having a baby. They weren't allowed to tell us that they were on drugs, but she had a little bit of a code with them that they would use, and she would pick it up, and we would learn that you can't give them too much formula because they would go sell it and use the money to buy drugs. So we had to be very judicious in the way that we shared things with people who had drug problems at the time. We worked all the time with local police, social agencies, churches, doctors, and so on. They would call us with their difficulties, and we would try and usually succeed in making things happen. A couple of stories from that particular 9 years. At one point, we got a call from some kind of a desperate mother in Hartford, and we put together all of the things that she might need for her coming baby. And we always took the children with us. We packed them up into the station wagon, all the clothes. We went into Hartford and found this lady lived on the 3rd or 4th floor of a pretty dumpy apartment, actually. And we went in, and everybody, all of us carrying something for this lady's new baby. and got into an elevator that smelled of urine. Finally got to the floor, knocked on the door, and the curtains were ripped and the dishes were piled up, and the smell was not too pleasant. But we dropped off our things and then scooted back to the elevator and back to the car and back home. And the reason I mention that is because we teach best when we're not teaching at all. Our kids were with us, and that day, without saying anything, they learned something about people, about the poor, about their own lives, and about the future and how to help other people, and that little things really do make a difference. And it was a good experience. Children never forget the things they learned in their childhood, and we have to remember that in this culture where we aren't very good at taking care of our own children. So that was one story that took place during those 9 years. Another one is the manager of the Hooker Hotel, and that was the man's name, Hooker Hotel, in a nearby town, called and said a girl had just given birth in one of the rooms, and the baby was now in the drawer of one of the dressers. Could you come and do something? And we did. We went and took care of the baby and the girl and dealt with all of the things that were necessary in that type of an emergency situation. So we were being available and learning things as we were going along and doing ministry. We were doing ministry. Another thing that happened during those times is we would work with the mental retardation unit here in Connecticut. And at Christmas time, we were able to collect literally a truckload or two of toys. We had them here in our one of our rooms, and the kids, were very disciplined in not playing with those toys. And in fact, when we took the toys and gave them to the people at the mental retardation organization to share with their children, our kids, in fact, added toys to the pile. Again, what a teachable moment. We teach best when we're not teaching at all, and no one asked them to do that. They just did that. What a nice thing to have happen as a result of our ministry. So this is married priesthood, again, in action, making things happen that should be normal, right, in the life of a Christian or as a Christian is growing. So these are some of the things, and perhaps there's a few others that I'll talk to Cynthia later and see if there's anything that I left out that I really should have been sharing. When we first got into Mary's Field, that's a whole story in itself, and I'm going to try to share that in a corporate way next time that we get together. But I'd just like to share again a couple of stories to make you reflect on married priesthood, whether it works, and so on. Again, during all of this time, Cindy's doing half the work with all of our children still growing and doing a good job being mother. Not an easy thing, and she was very generous and really, really good at it. On about 2 or 3 days before Christmas, one of the things we did was marriage counseling, family counseling, and some spiritual direction and so on. All during the time that we were at Mary's Field, we finally had a place, and that's what I'm now calling Mary's Field. A married couple came to us. The husband had been unfaithful in the marriage. And we finally got them both to come in and talk. It was a couple days before Christmas, I remember. And I remember Cindy having to, at one point in the session, having to almost wrestle the woman back into her chair because she just wanted to leave. She was so upset and insulted and hurt by all of the things that her husband had done. But they were good people, really good people, both praying people. And in the course of a couple of 3 hours, we got them to be able to agree to, at least at that point, to stay together and so on. And then after Christmas, we kept meeting. And as it turned out, everything worked well. And this day, they're actually together and quite happy. They were both very loving, very generous. One of the neat things that happened as a result of that is they came to Mass on Christmas Eve. We always had about 20 or 30 people for Christmas Eve. And they came to Mass that night, 2 days later, with their children and with one of the mothers. And after Mass, the children came up to Cindy and me, and one of the mothers, I can't remember which one, her mother or his mother, but all of them thanked us for keeping this couple together. And it was a wonderful moment Just a wonderful moment. They were able to spend Christmas together because of the things we had done. And as a nice gift for us, they had a ceramic church made, which today we are displaying 25 years later every time we put up our Christmas decorations. And we receive a Christmas card from them every year as well. So, so this kind of thing is going on. I wondered, after I thought about that, how much of the success in that marriage session depended on the fact that I was a married priest, that I was married, had a wife, had children, had a regular job. I'm here now in a different way, being present to these people. And as a result of sometimes just that presence, with all of those kinds of vocations and qualifications being present but not spoken, you have a power, an ability to touch things that you would not have in another way. And so again, maybe that story in itself is a real proof of the value, and that married priesthood really, in fact, does indeed work. Another a story that a man came to us. This was really a sad story. He came to us having been abused as a 4-year-old child by a satanic cult. They had ritually abused him, the details of which I'm not going to share, but it was really ugly. And after some talking and sessions and praying and deliverance prayer, we were able to get this man back on his feet. He's now in his 30s, but going back, reliving this incredibly dastardly, awful experience. And it's another example of, is Satan real? Is devil real? He really is. And we've come to know that by experience. You don't like talking about this stuff. And if you remember in our last session or the one before, I mentioned that Jesus, in one of his messages to one of the prophets these days, said that it is Satan who is ruling the world right now momentarily. And that's true. How else explain all of the craziness, absolute corruption that's taking place in the hearts of people in our culture? You can't. And that's why, Dr. M. Scott Peck wrote his book, on the lies that are being said. It's just something that's absolutely overwhelming. So there are a couple of stories that help you to recognize that my ministry as married priest is something that is real, that it is effective, that it is something that is able to touch people's hearts in a way that when I was celibate, I wouldn't have that kind of power or ability to be able to touch lives, in that particular way. So I am priest and I am dad, and I would like to think that one makes me better at the other, and I think that's been our experience over the last many years with Mary's Field. I'll be back to share a little more of the incredible details. Before I stop, let me share one more with you. We were looking, after 9 years, we needed a place to do Mary's Field. We getting too difficult of using the rooms in our houses to store things and so on. And so we really needed a place to go. And it was at that time that our oldest daughter, Catherine Ann, came to us and, I don't know, out of the blue said, "Mom and Dad, we'd like an indoor swimming pool." And after thinking about such a request, Cindy said, "Well, why don't you pray for it?" And then a little bit later, she came back, days or weeks later, don't remember which. She said, "I'd like to have a jukebox so I could entertain my friends." And Cindy said, "Well, put it on the list." And then my son Bill came and said, "I'd like to have, if this happens, a robotic pool cleaner so you don't have to clean the pool." And we're looking around for months, going to different places, looking for a home for Mary's Field, because we just could not continue to do this out of our house. And with a couple of our board members, we checked one place out. It had 21 acres and just about a mile from our house, and so we checked it out. The man that was living there sadly had a sad death, and we were just offered this place to look at it. The bank owned it at the time, and we went up, and as we were looking around, what do you think was in there? An indoor swimming pool, a robotic pool cleaner, and a jukebox. When we saw that, we knew that that was the place we had to stay. And to go back on that story, after the kids had mentioned we want an indoor pool, a robotic pool cleaner, and a jukebox, Cindy said, and nothing was happening, Cindy said to them, maybe you ought to do something first for God. And so what they did is they gave up television, and they didn't watch television actually for 10 years. And they gave up television. And it was then that the Lord moved with Cindy and me and a couple of the members of our board that day when we walked into Mary's Field, saw an indoor pool, a robotic pool cleaner, a jukebox. Beautiful place, 20 some acres, enough room to be able to run retreats, and that's a story for another day, but I'll be back to you. But always remember, in the course of the story, I am priest, I am dad, and the one really indeed makes me better with the other. God bless you. Good to be with you. Keep me in your prayers. You're in mine.